Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call to order the Finance and Labor Relations Committee. I'll call it to order. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? None noted. Item 3 is a motion that addenda to December 9th, 2020 Finance and Labor Relations Committee agenda as printed be adopted. Moved by Councillor Gaffney, Councillor Purback seconds it. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Item 4 is completion of the 2021 operating budget, and 4.1 is the Stratford Police Services. So I'll turn it over to the chief or deputy chief, whoever is available.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee. Deputy Chief Jerry Foster here. So where would you like me to start, sir?
Well, you can just highlight what's happening, and then if there's questions, we'll go from there.
Absolutely. We are anticipating a total 1.28% budgetary increase for the operating side for 2021. We have conducted a grant review for the budget for 2021. We have taken a very sharp pencil to our full-time salary line, which is the majority of our budget costs, and we're able to reduce that by approximately 0.47%. We have increased, however, what we refer to as our premium funding, which covers things like overtime, court, shift premiums, acting, and other premiums that are entitled to the members by way of the collective agreement. And we also have at least one member right now that is off on long-term absence, likely to extend most of 2021. So that's an increase of about 29.9%. Nevertheless, we've been able to reduce other areas of the budget because of the COVID situation, things like training and conferences, which we know we're going to have a harder time getting to. So we've been able to cut some of those operating costs down, at least for this year. What we refer to as our Pride operating costs. So that's our costs associated with being part of the Pride group. And for those that aren't familiar with that term, it's a IT/police interactive group between Waterloo Police, Brantford, and South Simcoe. We've been part of that since the mid-'80s. There was an increase this year that we were unable to avoid of 6.7%. We have requesting to put some money aside into reserves to support a radio system upgrade, which is critical for the service. We're looking at doing some archival room upgrades. And aside from that, we don't really anticipate at this time any significant budgetary impact as a result of COVID. That may change with some overtime, perhaps, if people start getting sick. I know we're talking operating, but we do have two capital projects in 2021, one being the major radio system upgrade and the second being the administrative phone system upgrade.
Right.
I think that's all I have.
I'll open up for any questions or comments on the police budget. Any questions or comments? Kathy?
I think I asked this before, but for clarity, the reserves, so Perth South and St. Mary's, are they allocated a portion of some of those reserves for their equivalent, or for the sort of prorated to the service that we provide for them?
The answer is mostly yes. So in the case of the radio system upgrade, St. Mary's will be contributing because they have equipment in St. Mary's that will have to be upgraded as a result. Perth South doesn't have any of that equipment deployed. The administrative phone system, it's unlikely that we'll have to request that support from St. Mary's and Perth South because there really isn't any of that technology deployed in either of those two areas. In any case, said differently, if we didn't have St. Mary's and Perth South, we would still have those costs regardless.
Understood, I guess, but since we are providing them a service, right? I I can understand that we need to spend it anyways, but I think also that there could be some room there for sharing some of those base administrative kind of activities.
Yep, fair enough.
Any other questions or comments on Jody?
Thank you. Yes, under law enforcement equipment, the materials, I'm just curious what that entails. I'm just noting that typical spending seems to be quite a bit more than the budget line. So I'm just wondering what that is.
Thank you. Through the chair, law enforcement equipment materials is a little bit of a catch-all for us. Things that are associated to, for example, use of force technology, pistols, duty belts, anything associated with the actual job of being a law enforcement officer. In the past year, we ended up being a good project, but drove some of the costs up. We added a MOLLE vest system to the patrol officers to help take the equipment as much as we can off of their duty belts, and then move it up to their upper body for their own physical well-being. So that increased some of the costs last year. And the other thing we did, some of that money is also allocated towards our auxiliary program that we launched in 2020. So we brought on initially 10 members from the community to be volunteers with the service, and they were outfitted similar to what an officer would have. Of course, they don't have all of the equipment, but they had uniforms and duty belts and body armor and some of that gear as well. So we don't anticipate those overages again in 2021.
I believe it's in the report. Is there any, are cameras coming on police officers, or is that part of it? Is it in the budget about adding cameras as the police patrol?
So it's not part of the 2021 budget. However, I think we can advise council that the board passed a motion at our last meeting that we would be adopting a body worn camera project in 2021. So we are in discussions with a vendor right now to make those arrangements. So the plan for funding that would be to leverage some of our existing excess funding or surplus funding from the 2020 operating budget to help offset those costs in 2021.
Thank you. Martin Ritzma, or Councilor Ritzma.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chair Clifford. And you may have answered this. I just had a little bit of a technical difficulty getting on, but I just want to ask about the high school resource officer during COVID. I'm wondering where that service is at, and was that officer, if not in the schools, just reassigned?
So through the chair, that entire position has been revamped. So we have taken the high school resource officer and transitioned it into a community resource unit. So where we had one officer in the past dedicated only to the high schools, another mostly to the elementary schools, we have a 3-officer unit now that has a capacity. Any one of them can go into any one of those locations or any other community location and provide education and support that way. Because of COVID, especially at the earlier start of the pandemic, we decided to suspend the in-person attendance at schools in a proactive way so that we could reduce the potential for the spread of infection.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on the police budget? Thank you for coming up. I think you've answered all our questions, and we'll thank you very much for participating.
Thank you very much.
Item 4.2 is Stratford Public Library, and Julia, I think, is here.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. A quick overview of the library. This is a status quo budget. It is presented at 2.37% increase. The major changes are a cost of living adjustment for staff wages and benefits, and 2 proposed expansion projects which I talked about last Friday, which was the reduction in fines being collected from library patrons. So that would be about $16,000. And then additional funding for the Wi-Fi hotspots, which we lend into the community for a week at a time. So both of those projects are aimed at assisting particularly those populations who are negatively affected by the pandemic. And if those were removed from the budget proposal, the total budget would be closer to 1.5% increase over last year. Other than that, I don't have a great deal of change to comment on. Our requirements for pandemic equipment and things like that have been accounted for by reallocating existing spending patterns. So there's been no change in the majority of the other budget lines.
Great. Open up for questions or comments on Stratford Public Library. It looks like you're going to get off easy. I don't see any questions or comments. Thank you very much for your report. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was going to ask our director, would it be appropriate to ask for a motion to accept the operating budget as discussed and printed as at this time?
Through the chair, I would prefer to wait until probably we are finished, maybe after the next meeting. I think there are still some changes that we will need to add into the operating budget based
Okay.
on some of the discussions we've had. And along those lines, we're proposing that we're going to bring a summary early December 16th, taking you from your 2.2 binders, any changes that we make and where we sit. We'll bring that forward at December 16th.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go on to 4.3, the 2021 expansion request. And it's in our binder.
What page is it on, please? Never mind, I found it.
Okay, we've got the computer aid design and drafts person, and that'll be likely Ed.
Yes, through the chair. I'll just hit on some highlights of this position. As noted, we used to have two computer drafts persons with the engineering department in the past. As a cost-cutting measure, the one position was eliminated. It's proven that we do need this position reinstated. There has been an ask through my staff for the last couple of years on this. It just hasn't made it to council because of other budget pressures. But we've asked for it again this year. As noted, we're falling behind in our as-built drawings, which are needed for when locates are done, other work is done in the future, so we need to get those drawings updated. And although not included in this, as we had to complete these forms several months ago, I did talk about the new requirements through the Ministry of the Environment with respect to the linear environmental compliance approval that we're going to be going through starting next year and into 2022. We've sat down as staff, and it is going to be a lot of work. We started talking to some communities that did a pilot for this, and there was months worth of work, and this is larger communities that had more staff to do the work, and so it is needed as explained in the business case, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if the work that this particular position would do links with the GIS work, and if this would be incorporated into any sort of internal mapping or external mapping that we might have.
Yeah, through the chair, this does help with any external mapping by us updating drawings that we have. That information then is provided to include in the GIS when it's updated.
Kathy.
Does having, sometimes it's sort of, I go back to sort of the fleet supervisor position. If we had this position, would it reduce some of the costs associated with going out to consultants or having to do contracts with outside people? Like, are there cost savings to be found in actually having this position?
Through the chair eventually, but as I've noted, we've got a fair bit of backlog to get through first. And once we get on top of that, I think the backlog plus the linear ECA, when we get through that, then we can look at doing more internal design. And as noted, we have 2 designers, 2 project engineers, yet only 1 drafts person to do all this. So there is a challenge there in doing the in-house work by only having the 1 CAD operator. So this will definitely in the future, as I said, once we get through the backlog, and helping us do more internal work.
Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
So am I understanding this right? Like each person has it on their own computer? There's not just one place they go and do this?
Through the chair, yes. Based on the licensing, each person has their own computer set up, desktop system, and then they would have their own license to use the design software.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ed on this one? Kathy.
I was just saying, are you looking for a motion around? Yeah, so I would move that we add this position.
And Councillor Ingram is the seconder. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Herr Matheson.
Ed, you've already been working on the renovations to your office space. You've contemplated this workstation under the new regime of distance and everything else as well?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, this was accounted for. We made sure when we did all the renovations, there was some space for students as well as the potential for future staffing to be included in it. So it's not like we have to redo any of the spaces that we built that we're finishing up right now.
Any other questions or comments? The only comment I have, when we start adding this up, I hope at the end that our tax increase is going to be under the 3%. And I hope we are getting closer every time we add something, and we can always subtract some stuff at the end. But anyways, so we have a motion on the floor. If there's no other questions or comments, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? That's unanimous. We'll go on to the security enhancement, and that's corporate services.
Yes, so through the chair, that was discussed. If we could get a motion in this session to include that in the budget, we will add it into our summary and bring that back on December 16th with the other items that have been added.
Okay, a motion by Councillor Gaffney, seconded by Councillor Lasco. Any questions or comments? Councillor Seven.
Yeah, I don't know, and the answer could be no, but is it possible just for the public do we have a general sort of explanation of what this item is, or is that possible?
No, absolutely. No, that's fine. I'll ask our director to highlight this.
Yes, through the chair, this is some security enhancements that we'll be subscribing to that have been recommended by our consultant and came out of the cyber incident that we had last April.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? Call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Is there anything else in enhancement that I've missed? Ask our director.
No, through the chair, I think you have them all. We only had the 2.
Great, thank you. We'll go on to item 5, the 2021 to 2030 capital forecast, and that's also in our book if you want to.
through the chair, this is provided for information. We aren't looking for this to be approved at this time because every year those items could change based on what we need in any given year, but it is there as a forecast for what may be coming in future years.
Okay, so I'll open up for any questions or comments on this. Kathy?
So and looking at that capital forecast, I'm assuming that what we're going to be doing is incorporating the asset management, some of the work that's being done around the asset management plan into tweaking this going forward.
Yes, through the chair, we still have to bring the final asset management plan along with an asset management coordinator position we'll be recommending, but we do have funds from our asset management grant money that we'll be bringing forward as well, so we don't project any impact on the taxes for 2021.
And my point is that'll be great because it'll help sort of drive some of this long range planning in the future, correct?
Yes, and it will be required for some of our grant applications as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Anything else on the expansion on the capital forecast? When I looked at it in IT, we have like quite a bit of ongoing expenses and computers and whatnot. So is there anything in reserve for any of that capital expenses?
Yes, through the chair, through operating, IT does put money into the reserve, and the majority of those capital items do come from that reserve.
Great. Any other questions? Councillor Henderson has her hand up.
Yeah, this is a question for David St. Louis. You know that the Accessibility Committee has done some audits on the different sports fields around the city. I think we still have 3 to go before we sort of do the whole final report. I think you've got little bits and pieces of it. I couldn't see anything in the budget for next year, but I'm assuming it's going to start in 2022. So is the intent to maybe have a budget line that, I don't know, whether it's once a year or once every 2 years, depending on the cost, that we will start to make our sports fields more accessible?
Through the chair, that would be the general intent to do that. When we get the final information, we'll put it all together and probably spread it over our future needs. But yeah, that's generally the intent, is to work towards that.
Be sort of similar to replacing the playground equipment type thing, and until it's all sort of caught up. I mean, some things won't be very much money, and some things, well, will be more money, because if you're renovating washrooms, of course, that costs more money. Or if you're just changing pathways and stuff like that, it's not quite as bad. Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to double check.
Thanks, Bonnie. Anything else on this on the capital? Okay, let's go on to item 6, a follow-up from the previous budget meetings, and we have that in our addenda. Item 6, report of the city clerk. 6.1, the tourist strategy, consultant quote, and funding opportunity. I don't know who wants to speak to that.
Through the chair, I would be more than happy to speak to it. This is a follow-up report from the one submitted a few weeks ago, and as noted, staff began working with Destination Stratford to begin work on obtaining a consultant quote. During those discussions, it was determined that due to the timelines available, especially given we are well into the budget deliberations, it was felt referring the development of a tourism strategy and obtaining of a consultant would be best for the 2022 budget. So the recommendation before you is to receive the report, to retain a consultant, be referred to the 2022 budget. That staff continue to work with Destination Stratford to obtain those consultant quotes and the funding opportunities. And then we are requesting that direction be provided on the overall goal or objective of the tourism strategy from council's perspective. This will assist us as we begin developing the proposal documents that we would issue if council were to approve this item for the draft 2022 budget. And I am available for any questions.
I was going to ask, like that direction you're asking for, are you asking for it right now, or because we have some time, is that something we can talk about in the future?
Through the chair, we can certainly relist the direction at a future meeting. We would request the referral to the 2022 budget today if possible, but we will take direction from the committee.
I'll open up for anyone that wants to discuss the overall goals, or is that something you want to put off for a while? Kathy.
I'm certainly would move that we go ahead with referring to the 2022 budget, the looking for a consultant. I do think that we could come up with some goals right now, but I really think that the next sort of 4 or 5 months in terms of the COVID outbreak, like pandemic, is going to be really key in figuring out where we're going to be even like 6 months from now or a year from now. So I would really like to see that direction brought back on the overall goals, maybe when we have a bit of a better sense of how, you know, vaccine rollout is happening, how people are responding to it. Like there's just a few things in the next few months, I think, that are going to be really crucial before we actually build some of those goals. So I would be happy to maybe ask staff to bring this back maybe in 2 or 3 months for additional direction on what we want to achieve with that review.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to refer it to the 2022 budget. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burback will second it, and I think Councillor Bunting has his hand up.
I just wanted to say that I agree completely with what Kathy said, essentially, and I was going to second it, but I guess Jody beat me to it.
Well, okay, thank you, Councillor Bunting. We have a motion on the floor. I'll call the question on the motion. It's a referral motion anyways. All in favor?
Okay.
Oh, Bonnie wants to speak.
I just want to ask the question about, like, I guess it's going to come back, but I mean, I'm wondering if we still feel we need to do this, because, you know, it sounds like tourism's already making changes over there. Like they're opening up to all the businesses and they're changing how they were doing things. So unless that's just part of our discussion later, whether we need to still have this discussion to spend the money on a consultant.
Well, I think I can answer. It's a long-term plan they're talking about. It isn't only for the COVID. It's in the next 5 or 10 years, I think they're talking too. Councillor Vasilevsky.
I was just going to add, it's not just, I mean, COVID is a large part of what we're going to have to consider, because I say the tourism industry had to work really hard after SARS, and that was just Toronto specific, right? So there's a lot of work to go with that. But I think there's also, I think COVID will actually accelerate a demographic shift in tourism that we'll have to, that we were already having to grapple with in Stratford. So I really do think of coming up with a focused strategy that can be followed is going to be really, really important. And I know that most of the national tourism sort of boards are doing a lot of work around trying to predict how and who is going to be traveling. So I don't think this is just about COVID, but I think we're going to have to do it.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to refer it to the 2022 budget. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 7.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry.
If I could, I believe the clerk had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't see her.
Before we.
So through the chair, I just want to clarify that the motion simply was to refer the consultant to the 2022 budget? Did it also include the recommendation to bring back a report in 2 to 3 months to seek further feedback on the proposal and the strategy?
That, exactly. I believe that's what the intent was.
That was my intent. I don't know about the second. It was basically to accept the entire recommendation from staff, but just take that last direction piece and punt it forward a few months.
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe that was intent. Everyone agrees, and we voted, we passed it. Item 7, the 2021 budget follow-up request information.
So through the chair, we've provided some information. We have some attachments to that report for information that council had asked. So the first one is the grant summary. The information is there. We have a draft budget of $729,050. And so far our requests, you can see, are $804,480.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments on the grants? Councillor Henderson.
Well, it's looking like the grants are around, am I reading this right? That the grants are around 100,000 less than we had budgeted for?
To the chair, yes, we took $100,000 from the grant budget, reduced it from 233,000 to 133,000.
Right.
And council had requested because the grant applications have closed, what we have received so far.
I guess I was just wondering if we could, if we have that money there, I mean, maybe we can use it to offset the taxes, but could it be put back on paying the hospice? If there's extra later in the budget, like when we get on further on, if there's, or if maybe we'll need that 100,000 to offset the tax, but you know, to help it a bit.
Chairman Matheson has his hand up.
Well, I appreciate that Bonnie's got an idea with regard to the hospice. I'd like to wait, if we could, till we were done so that we are aware of all our increases so that we can make that decision in the context of that information.
Sounds great.
Okay, Kathy has her hand up next.
My memories, I probably could have looked this up, but I don't. Again, I don't have access to my budget binders at the city, so that would explain it. 180,000, that seems less to me than what we've received other years in terms of applications and then approvals. Is that correct? I seem to recall that it was in the 200s previous, like well into the 200s previously of what organizations had requested under that annual one time.
Yeah, through the chair, we did add up the request that we have received. The deadline has closed, and that's what the total was.
So yeah, and so I think I go back to the idea that I'm thinking that I think we have less than in the past, and usually we actually give out. I think it comes out to some eligibility issues and things like that. That I think we're going to come up a little short, but I'm not sure that we're going to come up that short after reviewing them. So I'm thinking I'm okay where it sits now, with the back of our minds that there may be some tweaking as we start to look at some of those grants.
I got Councillor Seven and Burback.
Thank you. Just to follow up to Councillor Vasilako's question. So if for instance we come across something and it's the grant review or council reviews and would prefer that something be included, is there an ability for us to grant it if we've already reached the 133,000 as the new limit? If
council at their discretion can add or subtract what they will. So yeah. So if we see something and the majority of council agrees to add it on, it will be added, and the other way also.
Okay, yeah, I would just hate to see things that we wouldn't normally we would normally support not being supported because of this, but if there's some flexibility, then that's fine. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jody and Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is around fee waivers, and I'm hoping this is the right spot to ask it. Last week, some bed and breakfast owners were talking to me about they got a notice that they would need to be paying their licensing fees, and they have been pretty hard hit by COVID and are wondering, or we're hoping that there might be some waiving of fees this year. Like, does that fall under this category or does it come somewhere else?
I'll turn that to our Director of Corporate Services.
Through the chair, that is not included in these fee waivers. This includes hockey subsidies, minor hockey subsidies, things that we do internally. For example, we do all of the accounting finance for the golf course. So we charge that to them through an internal process. We have received the request from about the B&Bs. Those types of requests will be coming forward to council to make a decision on, and those items are included in one of the attachments of unbudgeted items.
Great, thank you.
Bonnie?
Well, I was just looking down at these totals again. So last year, 2020 was 904,000. It says our budget for this year is 729, but the ask is 804. So we're actually 80,000 short, right?
Through the chair, yes.
Correct.
Oh, so there wasn't that 100,000 at all. Not even there. Huh.
Kathy?
Well, yeah, maybe you can explain why it was lowered so much.
Well, the point I was making, Bonnie, earlier was that we always, that what's requested and what's finally approved is always different. We do often go through in the budget process and decline some grants without having seen what's been submitted so far. It's hard for me to say, but we do routinely come in under what's requested. So that's what I'm saying. That gap may not be as big as it looks right there, given what I see.
But do you know, since you're on the grants committee, why it was reduced by almost 180,000 or 170,000, I guess?
You mean
from
this
last year?
That was what staff came back with.
Oh.
But I will know that part of that is our larger commitments, and we're not giving them less, we're just spreading it out a little bit more. So a good chunk of that isn't actually saying no to an organization, it's just saying, can we give you that money over a longer period of time? So if they're amenable to that, I don't think that's so bad given COVID.
Right.
Anything else on the grants? Let's go on to the rest of the report. I'll turn it back to our director.
Yes, so we also have the email from United Way, which explains what they're doing for 2021. That was requested by council. We also have an attachment on the Industrial Land Reserve Fund, the history of its balance. And we also have the development costs for Crane Avenue to date are $1,954,671. That was a request of council as well.
Thanks for getting all that information.
The unbudgeted items that we discussed, we itemized those. Now, since the tourism strategy, we just passed that motion to put that to 2022, we will remove that item. So the total of these unbudgeted items are $215,500. And this is where you would find the potential refunds for the B&Bs and any of the requests that we get that would come to council for approval. This is also money that could come from the Strategic Community Development Reserve Fund. So I've put the information there on the balance on that fund as well. So if council wants to include any of these things in the budget, we would put it in and put a transfer from the reserve fund.
Okay, I've got Mayor Matheson and then Joan and then Councillor Henderson.
Janice, what is the amount if we were to refund the B&B licenses? Do you have an amount that would represent?
Through the chair, that would be $31,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Joan.
Thank you. Because we are on this topic with the Strategic Community Development Reserve. I would also like to bring forward for Council's consideration, including $35,000 in this budget to be taken from that reserve for the consultant facilitation work as previously presented. And if so, we would like a motion to include that amount in with this particular list of other items. Thank you.
Okay, we have a request. We have a motion. Kathy, you have your hand up. Moved by Kathy, seconded by Councillor Henderson. I believe you. Councillor Henderson, do you have your hand up to speak also? Councillor Henderson.
Oh, I was seconding it, sorry. Oh, before I had my hand up. But are we not voting on the motion right now?
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor to take $35,000 out of reserve. We've had it's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on that? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's passed. Kathy?
So I had a question about this, the Strategic Community Development Reserve Fund. It says when industrial land is sold, 8% of the proceeds are deposited into this account. Would that include then the Crane Avenue, since it's already in it? Would part of this fund be replenished with the sale of the Crane Avenue lands?
Yes, through the chair, anything in the Wright Boulevard and the Crane Avenue development would go into this fund.
Okay, so
sorry.
So I was just going to follow up. So I know that it sort of depletes this fund, but I also think, given, my opinion on this is that given the amount of work that we're going to need to do to try to stay on top of or deal with COVID and climate change at the same time, I'm not adverse to using what's in that fund. And I don't know if you're looking for a motion for that, but I'm just pointing that out.
Yes, through the chair, I would like a motion to include, we'll remove the tourism strategy $25,000. We will add the CAO's $35,000. The new total will be $250,500. We'd like to add that into the budget, and then we would like to add a transfer from this reserve fund into the budget to offset it.
And if I may, just because I do know that there may be more funds coming for some of this. This would also include those staff to continue, I mean, this is obvious, but I'm just saying it out loud, sorry. Looking for additional funding. So some of that, let's say Lights on Stratford or some of those other pieces, if there were to be funds to become available from other levels of government, then it would just offset this spending and keep that reserve higher. Right?
Yes, what doesn't get spent won't come from the reserve.
Okay, so I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have and Councillor Burbach will second the motion. And Cody wants, I have Councillor Henderson. I don't know what she wants to speak about, but I had her before. I apologize to Councillor Henderson.
That's okay. I just question like the personal protective equipment for staff, 25,000. Wouldn't that normally just come under each department, or is it because it's just for COVID that it's being kept separate? Because, is that the reason?
Through the chair, this amount is specifically for filters for masks that city staff are currently using to make those a 3-layer mask as recommended by the health unit.
Also, it's like a one-time fund thing. It's okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Burbach, then Councillor Seven.
Thank you. As sort of following up on what Kathy was talking about, looking at the shared climate change coordinator, there may be possible funding for that. The other thing that I worry about a little bit is if the county decides not to continue with it. I really think that's a very important position for us to have. So I don't know what the possibility is, but I would like us to consider that if the county doesn't go ahead, that we would still fund this position fully and have this, we have more than enough work to keep them busy for next year. So I don't know if we need to change what we have now because we don't know how the county is going to move forward. But I would just like to sort of note that I would strongly recommend that we would spend the additional money if they decided not to go ahead with that position.
It's been flagged. Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Seven, then Gaffney.
Thank you. Can I please have clarification on the motion on the floor?
Okay, I'll ask the clerk if she has what the motion is.
Through the chair, it is my understanding that the motion on the floor is to approve the addition of the 2021. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to my report for the official wording. Sorry, so it's that the unbudgeted 2021 budget items in totaling $255,000 be added to the draft 2021 budget. We're looking to our Director of Corporate Services. Do you require a line requesting that it be taken from the reserve, the transfer to reserve as well?
Yes, so the amount is 250,500, and that be funded through the Strategic Community Development Reserve Fund.
Okay.
And if I could follow up, so would that be, it's funded through reserve, so that wouldn't affect the increase, is that correct?
That's correct.
It comes out of reserves, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Gaffney.
My question is a bit of an add-on to what Councillor Seven just asked. Does this include that number we just added for that additional project?
I believe it does.
Can
yes, it does.
Can we take that separately? And I only ask because
we've already voted on that, and it wasn't unanimous. So if we've already voted on that one, I think that one is passed. If we could include, I don't know, I'll ask our director how it's going to be easier for her to. We've already passed that, to be frank with you, and we had a couple opposed.
Yep, through the chair, the clerk may want to add to that.
So through the chair, it was my understanding that the motion that was just voted on was to add the facilitation of 35,000 to the list, the unbudgeted item list. Now the motion before you is to approve that list in totality, which is $250,500, which includes it. If there would be a recommendation to split that out further, then that could be considered.
Councillor Gaffney.
And that's what I would like to do, Mr. Chair, is separate that item out. If it has to be voted on again, then
I understand. So what we'll do, we'll vote on everything except the 35,000, if that's okay. And with the mover and seconder, is that fine? Yep. Okay. So we have a motion to accept out of reserves all but the 35,000. Any other questions or comments on that? If not, I'll call a question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Now we'll ask about the 35,000. It's included in the motion, but we have separated it. So I'll call the question on the 35,000 to what Joan had asked for. Any other questions or comments on the 35,000? I'll call all in favor. Yeah, all in favor. And opposed, if any. It still passed, strangely enough. Okay, I'll ask our Director of Corporate Service, anything else in that report that we haven't?
Yes, through the chair, there is one more attachment, and that is on the hazardous household hazardous waste days. And the Director of Infrastructure and Development has provided some information there as requested by Council.
Councillor Gaffney.
if we're looking for a motion, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to have 3 events in 2021, the drive-through events in 2021.
So we have a mover. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ritzma seconds it. I'll open up for questions and comments. Councillor Seven.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Dulovic. I believe you touched on this at the last meeting, but I just wanted some clarification around the expense. So is it the same price roughly to have 6 that are shorter, or is it more expensive to have 6 events that are shorter versus 3 that are longer?
Through the chair, it would be more expensive to have 6 shorter events because of setup time to bring in the contractor from the outside. And so, they charge a fixed fee, whether it's 3 hours or 6 hours for that setup. So it's more economical to go with the 3 longer events for their fixed charges that they charge.
Okay, thank you. And if I could follow up, do we have, if not, you can bring it back next time, but do we have sort of a rough idea of how much the difference would be for cost, 3 versus 6?
Through the chair, I do not have that. I'd have to go back and figure that out. I mean, if you're talking about the 6, for each 6-hour event, it's about $30,000. I do have that cost.
Okay, and then I'm just wondering, because I know that we have, with only 3 events, there is quite the backlog, which I didn't notice previous years when we had 6 of them, and I just wondered if it's a significant savings, then that's fine. But if it's not, so I don't know if that's something we could defer until and give the director time to have that information, or.
Ed, I'll turn back to you. I think he's asking, is there extra, is it significantly extra cost, or if it's?
Yeah, through the chair, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers in details. It's been some time since I've calculated the numbers. I think we'll look at what the numbers are and then say what it is. If you're talking about holding 6 shorter events, is that what the councillor is looking for?
Yeah, and sorry, just to clarify, I wasn't pushing for the numbers on the spot. I was just wanting to refer this to the next meeting, budget meeting, perhaps, to give time for numbers. But I know other people want to speak, so I'll just wait, I guess.
Okay, well, we can hold off on the referral motion till Councillor Purback has her hand.
Yeah, just going off of the discussions we had the last 2 years, there was significant backlog when we had this at the landfill site, and there was backups onto the road, and there were actually complaints from the public about the traffic concerns about blocking the road. So in this way, at least at the Rotary, those cars are off of the road. So I don't think the queuing was a problem already. This is just a better way to manage it, I think.
I've got Councillor Henderson and Councillor Ritzma.
I'm just a tiny bit confused about that, because I thought we already discussed this, because I thought we were going to save 30,000 per event, so that's 90,000. And what we were wanting to know is, I mean, I think I asked it was, how many cars were getting through, and it looks like we had 43 more in 2020 than we did in 2019. We did what, 17? Just a minute. Yeah, we did 1,700 in 2019 with 6 events, and 1,743 in 3 events. And you're going to have the expense of the event and staff, and because it's on a Saturday, right? And my understanding was at the landfill, there's 1 place to drop thing off, where at the Rotary, there's 3 places. So, I mean, I had concerns too about whether we should have more, because rather than have people, maybe have it in the spring and the fall and then halfway through the summer, whether it's a good idea to have people, will they keep their hazardous waste for the next one or not? But I mean, I know they keep it over the winter, but there is that discussion that should come in too.
Well, we'd have to have a report back, but Councillor Ritzma wants to give some input.
So thank you. Through the chair, certainly going to support Councillor Burback's comments. Once the process was fine-tuned up at the Rotary complex, it was very efficient and it went very well. So compliments to the staff for that. And so to that end, I believe we have a scenario that takes the traffic off the street, whether it's Romeo Street or McCarthy Road, and it can be very effective. So I would agree with the idea of round 3, and it would certainly save a lot of stress on the roads for sure, with regards to frustration of backing up traffic.
Yeah, if I could add, I dropped some stuff off and I found it extremely well organized. And I think if we advertise it properly like we have, I think the 3 will work out. It'll work out great. But if we want a referral motion, if you want to put one on the floor, Council 7, that's your prerogative.
I will pass. I appreciate the comments regarding that, so I'll just leave the motion as it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to have 3 times at the Rotary for the hazardous waste. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? I'll call the question. All in favor? That looks like it's unanimous. Anything else in our report that you have for us?
No, through the chair, that was the information that we provided this week. On December 16th, we have some additional requests for information we'll be bringing back. We'll also bring back a summary of all the changes to date with where we stand. And we'll be bringing back our survey results. We've had 85 responses to date, and that survey closes tonight at midnight.
Great. We do have a staff recommend. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to bring some additional information with respect to the council budget. There was questions asked at the last presentation, and I have the information for whenever you would like it to consider that. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead with that right now. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So it is my understanding that at the presentation of the operating budgets for the council budget, there were 2 questions asked. One had to do with the special events account and the request to see if $10,000 could be deducted. I did check with staff that $10,000 reduction can be done for 2021 because there is some anticipation that there may be fewer special events next year. However, there would be a request that in 2022 for that $10,000 to be put back in because it would be needed on the basis that we would be well past the current situation and into recovery. Secondly, the other question had to do with what is in the council conference budget, and the information that I am bringing forward is that covers the FCM, AMO, OSM, Ontario Good Roads, etc. So that is the amount there for attending those conferences and sessions that are put on throughout the year. Again, it could be reduced, but my advice to council is that you not reduce it. Even though there is no travel, there may be a need to attend those, and we encourage council and staff to attend those training sessions, whether it's the annual conference or the sessions throughout the year. We are in a rapidly changing environment, and it is good to stay up to date with the trends and new information. So I just wanted to bring that forward to you. If you did want to reduce the special events budget by the $10,000 for 2021, we would ask for a motion for direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Henderson. Yep.
Why don't could we have like a little list of things that if we get to the end of the budget and we need to trim, say 10 or 20,000 or something off, that could be on a list. And then that way you just leave it there for now. But we could, as we're going through things, we can itemize things that we think could be a possible cut. Because otherwise all it does is just make it look like a higher tax increase next year, right?
It's up to council if there's a
and also if say the vaccine goes over well and everybody's vaccinated, say by the fall, and things are back up at normal, we might end up needing that at the end of the year. Just an idea.
Sure. Whatever council's wishes on it. Any other comments on this $10,000 that was brought up? Councillor Seven.
Thank you. Apologies to sort of backtrack a little bit. I just was wondering, the item that was the $35,000, will that be coming back to council again once something is set up? And I guess that's my first question.
No, absolutely. All we've done is allot the dollars, but who's going to be there? Whatever's going to happen, it'll be discussed by council, but I'll turn it over to Joan to talk about that.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair, but certainly you are correct. This is just to put the funds in place, and we will of course be bringing back more information to council for direction with respect to that matter.
Okay, thank you. So council will be voting on whether to go ahead with that or not in the future. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think we've allotted the dollars, the majority of council. Now it'll be decided how we're going to spend it, I believe, but I could be corrected if I'm wrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, this is the with the money in the budget, and once the budget is approved, that will allow staff to move forward. I will say that at any time council can reconsider, not award or change the direction that you want to go on with respect to that by majority vote of council.
Councillor Seven.
Thank you. So I guess I was just looking for a story for the public. I'm not sure if we discussed sort of what that was for. I'm sorry to go back, but I just wanted to, just so the public are aware what that's for, and then just so for awareness, I guess.
Okay, I'll turn that back to our CEO.
So the amount is to facilitate some discussions with council. They will be with a facilitator on moving forward. As I said, I don't have a lot of details for you, and we will be bringing that back to council and looking for council's input as to what facilitation they are needing, but it is my recommendation and that we proceed with this. You are midway into your term, and it may be helpful to just have a refresher with respect to facilitation and good communications and moving forward as council.
Okay, thank you, John.
Any other questions or comments on that? We do have a staff recommendation that the report from the Director of Corporate Service regarding the 2021 budget follow-up requested information dated December 9th, 2020 be received for info. Moved by Councillor Seven, seconded by Councillor Burbach. And Councillor Henderson wants to speak to the motion on the floor.
I just have a quick question. Do you have the total, what percent we're at right now for tax? Is it still like 2.26 or something?
No, well, I don't know if it's higher than that for sure, but I'm not sure if she's, I'll turn it back to her.
Through the chair, I've been adding things as we've gone along. So from the 2.26 we were at before this meeting started, I have added in the IT expansion, and I have added in the CAD expansion through infrastructure and development, and that takes us to about 2.69.
Thank you very much. Any other question on the motion? Any other question for the motion on the floor? I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. I believe we've covered what we were going to tonight. Our next budget meeting is December the 16th at 3:30. Is there anything else anyone wants to bring up before Councillor Seven?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that since we are sort of edging closer to 3 than 2, I was just wondering if it'd be possible to have similar to previous years options brought back at the next meeting that could, if there are any, that we could bring it back down a little bit to be considered.
I'll turn that over to our Director of Corporate Services.
Yes, through the chair, we can bring back some options. I think our Community Services Department had provided a few options, and they'll be bringing some information back December 16th. And then we have the option to look at conferences and throughout the city and special events. So we'll bring back a list of things to look at.
Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
I might have missed this, but I'm just wondering, I think you said there was 85 people had responded to the survey so far. Are we going to get like a summary of concerns or ideas or from the public? Will that just be emailed to us or part of a report, or how are we doing that?
I'll turn that to our Director of Corporate Services.
Yes, through the chair, we will summarize that and bring that on December 16th.
Perfect, thank you. Actually, is there any way we could see it ahead of time so that, oh, it'll come out in our minutes. It'll be part of the report, never mind. Because I'm just thinking I want to review it before the meeting, so yeah, okay, never mind.
Any other questions of the motion that it be received for information? Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. If there's not anything else, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. Moved by Kathy, second by Councilor Vassilasco, second by Councilor Purback. All in favor? Thank you very much. We'll talk to you later.